Yo, welcome back to the Huh? I mean, yeah, I guess so. But I got you. And I have many more where that came from. All right, now that we've got that sorted, welcome to How to Drum and Bass, where it is my mission to teach you what the top producers are doing right now in their tracks so that you can improve your drum and bass production. And today we're gonna dismantle a really dope song that I think kind of kickstarted Jump Up going to the States, or at least fucking Chesto picking up on Jump Up drum and bass, which is crazy and which is an awesome development for the genre. So the song that I'm talking about, of course, is My Home is the Rave by Hedex. Semi-automatic, blah, blah, blah. Anyway. Yeah, earlier I already did a video about how to sort of recreate that cricket lasery sound and get a couple of variations. So if you haven't checked that out, check it out right here. But today we're going to do a full drop recreation of My Home is the Rave by Hedex. Now, as always, if you just want the presets for the sound, there'll be a link down below. I've realized actually that a couple times people told me that it wasn't working, so hopefully that's going to be fixed either now or very soon. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. All right, so the finished end product sounds like this. Riggedy right, we are in Ableton right now. We're gonna try to keep today shorter because my last videos were really long and I was told I do a little bit too much fluff. So let's keep it to the parts that are interesting and skip over some of the stuff that you can figure out by yourself. Let's go. All right, so what we're gonna create today, really quick overview, is we got the OG song here for reference and we're gonna create all the elements from the drop. I've stolen the intro, which you can see here. It's just the part of the original song because we're just gonna work on the drop section today, the first two parts of the drop. We're gonna extract the vocals, we're gonna build the horn sound, we're gonna build that crazy ass laser sound, then we're gonna make that wubwubwub sound. We're gonna add a little bit of a noise layer to the laser, talk more about that. We're gonna add a sub bass and then some pretty simple drums. And we're gonna talk a little bit about foliage and sort of noise layers and sort of how to fill up a track that has elements that only sparsely populate the frequency spectrum. That's it, that's what we're gonna do today. So let's get started. All right, so let's start with the vocal. I used lalal.ai, which is my favorite tool. It's an AI tool which can help you extract any stems or vocals from a track. It's really cool for the purposes of making these kinds of videos, but also for yourself to try stuff out. If you want to go try it out, check it out. There's a link in the description to lalal.ai. It's been a really big help to me so far, so nice. All right, so let's figure out how the drums go. Let's look for the kick in the OG song. All right, so what we hear is there's a combination of two things happening. There's a kick on the first beat. It starts out with that classic, I would almost call it sort of old school jump up style drums where they leave out one of the kicks. So instead of it's but then I think they chose for that so they could make room for this gigantic laser to sort of hit more and, you know, not have the kick sort of take away from that. But then it goes into a normal drum bass pattern after that. So let's make that. Let's go to this little drums group here that I've got. So I've got just a kick and a snare. I kept things very simple. I found two samples that actually already sounded pretty perfect. The trick really is to literally just isolate the kick. You can even use something like lalal.ai to get the drums out. And when you like a kick, you can literally just go on a splice and type kick D&B and then sort of like whether it's thumpy or boomy or whatever, and you will find something very similar. Super simple. Of course, if you want to create them all from scratch, kicks and snares, go watch my very in-depth kick and snare tutorials and you will never have to use another sample again if you wanted to. Anyways, so all I did was actually just apply 5 decibels of medium curve saturation on the drums. So what we've got here for the pattern is we've got that hit on that first part, right? So still playing the OG song. See, there's one there. And then And then what happens before the drop is we actually get one set of kick and snare sort of to kick in the drop. So you can hear it after the horn. See, there we go. So we got that here. And then you'll see here that we have this sort of jump up style pattern with only 2 kicks. But only 3 snares, because actually if you listen closely, you just hear a kick on that last beat. So we got kick, 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 and then 3 snares, and actually here the snare goes out. So that's quite interesting. And then after that, it follows just a normal distribution. So just like that, the drums sound like this. All right, and actually that very same thing just repeats for the second section of the drop. Just really quickly, what's cool to note here is one thing that happens a lot in drum bass production is that kick combined with the first bass hit or the first wub wub or whatever the sound that sort of initiates the drop, and it just gives more power to that sound. So if we would solo that wub wub sound and just the kick, right? That's together, but then this is without. It just gives it a lot more power, so that's something that you can use for your productions as well. Let's start building the very first sound that appears in this song, or definitely in the drop, which is the horn sound. So here's what it sounds like in the original song. So that, yeah, it just sounds like brass. I tried messing around a little bit with adding layers of real brass instruments, but I didn't quite get there. And someone in the comments actually said that the exact thing that they used is some Serum preset from some pack. Another person said it was the stock preset from a brass contact library. I couldn't find that, so I just made a horn sound in Serum. And it'll be playing some pretty simple notes. It's basically F sharp, F sharp, F sharp a bunch of times, and then it goes up one note, and then it goes down and down again. That's it. It sounds like this, what we've made so far. That's it. And compared to the original sound, actually, their timbre is actually a little bit sort of higher and has more of a metallic feel in the upper region. But for the purposes of today, I couldn't fit all that inside one Serum patch. I wanted to keep things simple. So we're going to go with this, which I think is more than good enough. So yeah, this patch, it's not that difficult, but it has quite some post-processing on it. So we got a BS2 sub saw, and we put some unison on that. We put the detune and the blend just at standard levels. But I did mess about with the phase a little bit. I found that because we're adding unison to both oscillators, it was better to mess around with the phase a little bit, it seemed. Now note how the wavetable position is all the way down, and there's FM from B applied at 15%. Both of those things are going to be automated, which I'll show in a second. Then in oscillator B, there's a BS2 Filthy, very similar. That BS2 Filthy is both going to play at a certain level, but it's also going to be used for that FM from B. I've applied a little bit of sync on there, specifically 1.26%. The reason for that is to actually get a little bit more of those upper high harmonics in there. 6 unison, same with the wavetable position, we're going to automate that. And if you don't know what sync does, it basically just duplicates the waveform onto itself so that you get a higher sort of pitched waveform, and that also affects the FM from B here. So that's something very cool to play around with for yourself, gives some very interesting timbres. For the filter, an MG low filter, MG6 applied to A and B, a cutoff of 30 Hertz, but we are going to be modulating that with LFO 1, 11% resonance, 34% drive, and I also turned the fat knob up. And then so in LFO 1, we're going to make slightly elongated shark tail shape. We're going to put it at a quarter note and on envelope mode so that it behaves like the envelope here. And we're going to apply that to this FM from B part, the wavetable position of oscillator B, and to the filter cutoff. Now, you can sort of play around with how much it affects the FM from B and the wavetable position to give it different timbres. I just found that these settings work nice specifically. So without any effects and all the post-processing taken off, that would sound like this. Now you can hear that that's pretty good in the mix. We just need to add some effects to it and some processing. So also maybe to note, in envelope 1, I made a shape like this. It doesn't seem to matter all that much, but the reason for that is actually we're emulating sort of like a tuba sound. The player of the instrument will blow air into the thing, but it won't come out directly. There's a slight delay, so that's why I want to have a little bit of attack in there. Then in effects, so first of all, there's distortion, just simple tube distortion with an 87% drive. I put the mix down to 95%. Now, if you want, you can also use this level knob to make the distortion louder. We don't need to do that because we're going to apply a little bit more saturation later. But you could do that to get even more of a driven sound. Then there is the chorus, which is really just at a rate of very low and just standard settings, really. And then one thing that I didn't do, but which you could do, is you can add flange filters, pretty much any of these, and kind of just mess around with the cutoff and the resonance and the drive to get more of a metallic sound to it, which is what you hear in the original track. I didn't feel like it added the right thing in this particular sound, but it's definitely an option to play around with if you're trying to make your own thing here. And so with these effects, it sounds like this. Let's turn all of this stuff back on again and see what we've got here. I added this amp. This is a preset from Ableton called Metallic, because that's what we kind of want in here. The original sound sounds a little bit metallic. Just a 15% dry wet, and basically the rest is preset settings. I think I messed a little bit with the treble in the middle. I upped those a little bit in an effort to get more of that high end out of there, which has been nice. And then also I use a utility to set the bass mono to about like 300 hertz, which we kind of need because we're working with a lot of unison and we're working on a lower frequency spectrum and we're not adding a sub bass onto this. We got to keep that mono to make things not clash with each other. Then I added a little bit more extra saturation. The reason I did this is I just love Ableton Saturator. It just sounds so good. A soft sine with a couple of dBs on it. And then just in another effort to sort of give a little bit more fuzz to the top end, because this is a very low brassy sound that we've made, I applied erosion. So what erosion does, if you don't know, it adds noise and distorts part of the frequency spectrum with that. So you can see here which part I chose, which is around 10K, and it just adds extra noise to it to make it more fuzzy on the top end. And then all I did was accentuate some frequencies. This was really just trial and error. I found that adding around 3000 hertz was good. And then I just did a little bit more here and applied a top shelf as well. All of this was just on hearing, trying to get closer to the original sound. But it's a great way to sort of drag around one of these things and kind of hear what it does to your sound and see if you can leave it somewhere where you like it better than without it. And then lastly, I applied some of my favorite reverb, which is from Audio Damage. Very simple, just a short decay, about 30% mix. And I didn't apply a really high low cut because actually the horn is the only thing that's going to be playing. So we can get away with like that low reverb stuff and just gives it a little bit more power. And then one final thing to note, what you could do if you wanted to really get up those sort of top timbres is you could actually add with a chord module or just by adding the notes manually, the same notes but then an octave higher. I didn't really like it, but it does get a little bit closer in some ways. Without it, it sounds like this. And then with it, it sounds like this. I felt like it sounded a little bit like too much hyper on there, too many voices, but up to you. All right, so let's get to the gnarly. Let's get to the laser. Or I don't even know if it's a laser. It sounds more like a cicada that's highly distressed or something like that. So let's really quickly have a look at what that sounds like in the OG song, right? What you can hear is there's a very classic technique that gets used a lot in drum bass, which is called the call and response technique. If you don't know what that is, Stranger, who you should definitely know if you watch my videos, because he's an awesome resource for drum bass production. He has a whole video on call and response. But it's basically, we got the call of this horn, the dun 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 dun, and then it's being responded to by the laser. And then, yeah, later we've got this wub sound that kind of fills stuff up. But the main act is sort of these guys battling for space in the domain, right? So what you see is we had those first couple of notes here, right? And you can visually see that they fill each other's gaps. So the notes of the laser are like this. They're probably not 100% accurate, but it doesn't really matter. It's just a long note and then a couple of short notes with, I think, just two elongated, slightly elongated ones, and then another long note. So it's like dee, 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 right? Yeah, you have that repeated over and over again, and you add them wherever you need them. Just by itself, that layer sounds like this. That's gnarly. I don't know if your volume is up enough, but if it is, it just sounds good. Let's dive into Serum. Actually, this is pretty simple. All it is a sub on a triangle wave, and this part is important. Normally the subs kind of matter-of-factly, but because this laser sound is so high-pitched, it doesn't occupy a lot of the rest of the frequency space. And this sub, actually, by not filtering out the sub, which we'll see in this patch, fills up a little bit more and sort of adds like a sort of droning kind of sound. And you hear that also back in the original song. If you listen closely, you'll hear the sub playing very clearly in there. So we put that on direct out, that it doesn't get affected by any effects or nothing. And then, yeah, all the action is done really by this crush wub wave. All I did was find sort of the wavetable position, right, which is the final one here, that sounded the most gnarly, but you can do 100,000 variations of this. So if I just play this patch, right, and I change around this wavetable position, you can also apply a whole bunch of effects. Like, actually, all of these options are cool to add to this to make it different. So you could apply the asim. See, you just get a whole like range of textures. In our case, we didn't use it. And also, you can see sort of the shape of this wave, right? Sort of the really gnarly ones, the ones that just go squiggly. You can basically use any. Before I chose the crush wub, I actually like tried out a bunch of the monster ones, and they're all really good for this kind of sound. Like Monster 3, for example, right? It's all good stuff. So go on an adventure there. And then, yeah, so what we want to do is we want to create some resonance in there as well. Sort of that high-pitched, disgusting stuff. So get a high filter and just like put the resonance all the way up. Put the cutoff really high, because that'll take out sort of those machiney sounds. So like without the filter, it's right. And you kind of want to take out that mechanical sound with the filter. So like, that goes out of there. And make sure just to only apply it to A, so don't actually apply it to the sub. And that resonance really gives that ee to it. Then in effects, just really simple, just some tube distortion and a multiband compressor. But what I did is I dragged these out and I made it accentuate the highs way more than the lows, which I guess are already sort of being filtered out, but that also helps a lot in the sound. See? And sometimes, you know, when you're trying to get the timbre right of something, it can be as simple as just getting the multiband compressor and just accentuating the mids or the highs. So that's a good tip as well. And so, yeah, really all I have in post-processing is just a utility, because I kind of wanted to put up the level. I prefer using the utility over using any of the other devices, because it looks so easy. And just the multiband dynamics, in which I just accentuated some of the highs and increased the output on that. Right, just to make it extra aggressive. Basically everything in this sort of modern, like now UK jump up, but it used to be Belgian jump up, everything that's super energetic, you'll find it's fucking saturated with really aggressive highs. All right, so far we've got the vocal, we've got the horn, we've got the laser, we got the drums, and together it sounds like this. Okay, so what you'll notice is it sounds empty. That makes sense, because there's not a lot of elements going on here, right? Like, we're really got to focus on this laser thing. And even though there's like a big reverb on the horn, it just sounds empty. So what you want to do with tracks like that makes them sound more professional and less empty, is you want to add sort of semi-perceptible layers, is what I would like to call it. And that's usually some foliage, or there's various names for it, but just like stuff that isn't really part of the song, but just fills up the frequency spectrum, and noise. Those are really the two big tricks. We're going to start off with, I actually wanted to add a noise layer to this laser. So basically I copied the whole thing and did a bit of post-processing, and I'll tell you why. If you listen to the OG sort of laser sound, you hear behind that, it's got like, and it's not just the screechiness of the laser. I think their patch is definitely different than what I've made here. It probably has like another layer to it or something like that, or they have a particular type of filter movement. But we can sort of emulate that by just adding a noise layer. So what we're gonna do is, copy everything that's this, right? And then we're gonna distort it quite a bit. So I used a decapitator, but really you can just use any distorter that you want with a full output. And then we're gonna use that distorted sound. So just really quickly, that sounds like this. So that's already less screechy. We're going to use that, and we're going to put it into a vocoder, which is going to turn it into noise, basically. You just play around a little bit with these settings to sort of get the feel of it right. I felt that increasing the formant made it sound a little bit more acceptable. But essentially what that's going to do is it's going to turn it into noise. And what's cool is that's just going to fill up a lot of the space behind that laser. And we're going to actually not make it that loud. I put it at -5 mix here, but actually I also added here a utility to take out another -5 dBs in the process. Let's just only keep sort of the highs from that before 1K. And yeah, together that's already going to sound a lot better. versus. Now, just like that, it probably doesn't sound so good, but you'll notice in the mix when we play the final result, it makes it sound a lot fuller. Okay, let's continue. Another thing that's really going to fill it up is we're going to add a sub bass under the laser. So the horn already has its own bass. That's fine. But the sub bass under the laser is definitely, I mean, it's there, but it's missing quite a lot. Basically, we've taken this sine wave and we've added another sine wave here that you can move up this bin and it'll go into sort of like a rounded square. And then when you have these two, what you can do is you can go to morph and crossfade. And it'll create a crossfade between these two shapes. And that'll appear here in the wavetable position. So you see there, it sort of morphs over time. And what it does, it actually sort of distorts the wave for you in the most purest form possible, because it distorts it towards a square wave. And that makes the bass sound really fat. And so I've modulated that with this LFO here that sort of gives it more movement. So as you can see, on every hit, it moves the sub bass. So like moving distortion. It's an oscillator A, it's a basic shapes. On oscillator B, it's a saw wave. And actually in the basic shapes, what we've done is we've done a little bit of editing here, which I really like to do. Then there's a filter, MG low, but it's actually only applied to A. Very simple, just with maximum drive, no effects on it. And then a glue compressor and an EQ to really only keep those sub frequencies, because otherwise, if the tones start coming through, it sounds weird. All right, then there's that really dope Wubwubwub sound that seems to be in like every single unreleased Hedex song right now. So let's have a look at that. Actually, if you want to figure out where the MIDI notes are, it's very simple. It literally just fills up the space where the other two elements haven't filled up the space yet, as you can see. So it's in the middle here, it's a bridge, it's the start here, it's another bridge, another bridge, another bridge. And it's just these very simple notes. For this patch that we're going to build, they're on A0. And the patch itself is actually also surprisingly simple in the bass, but it's got quite some effects on top of it and some modulation that make for this really fatness of the Wubwub. So we got this acid wavetable at -2 octaves. The wavetable position and the level are all the way down because we're going to modulate that with LFO1. And you'll see here the LFO1 has 9 things next to it, so that means a lot is modulated. Yeah, it's a shape like this, and you want to pull up these knobs here, not towards the bottom, but just a little bit up. Put out an 8th note, trigger mode, and then use it to modulate the wavetable position and the level. And then what we're going to do is we're going to apply pretty much all the standard effects, but we're really going to modulate a lot. So there's no hyper, but we do have dimension. The dimension is modulated, goes all the way to like, I don't know, like 20%. We've got a linear fold distortion, which is the distortion that you never use, but we do use it now. And there's a post filter in here that sort of takes out a bunch of the frequencies. That drive is modulated. And then what really makes the sound is this filter. So we got a low 24, but we're going to modulate the cutoff, the resonance, and the drive versus. So that really gives that sort of underwater juiciness to it, which I tried probably 17 different ways and plugins and EQs, and none of it gave that timbre to it except for doing this. So I'm going to be applying this to a whole lot more shit to see what kind of cool stuff we could do with that, but not today. Then there's a multiband compressor, pretty standard settings, EQ that sort of scoops out this frequency around 88 hertz, but still there's movement in there. We're automating stuff. It takes out pretty much, all of the highs past 1K, essentially 800. And yeah, again, we just put up a glue compressor. The reason actually here for the glue compressor is because we really want to compress the hell out of this sound, because we're only using a little bit of volume here, which is how it sounds best. And then we want to sort of artificially up the bass on that, because again, this will be playing on its own with nothing under it, so it needs its own bass. Yeah, we got a low shelf here. And then I had a utility here, but actually I don't think we need it. Nice. Then last but not least, we have the effects group. And so let's listen real quick to the original song and sort of try to listen what's behind the main elements, what's happening. So there was some droning going on there. That's from the main vocal. We've already captured that here in the vocal, so we don't need that anymore. Did you hear that? There, we got some noise coming in. There it comes again. And now we hear a siren coming in. See, and it sort of goes down over time. So yeah, we've got some more filling to do here. I figured that it sounded like an air can sound, and the reason I thought that is because both Hedex and Chase and Status, I think it has to do with their love sort of for UK cities and culture, and maybe specifically London culture. You see it in a lot of the videos from Liquor and Cigarettes and whatever. They sort of incorporate a lot of sound elements from London. Boo also does this, so they incorporate the sounds of the trains. They incorporate spray paint, like people doing graffiti and all this kind of stuff. Very cool, if you ask me. And this really sounded like an air can, like a spray paint can. So I found a sample of that, which sounds like this. So it's really like shh. It's just a sample. I wanted to pitch it down, so I used a shifter here. I really just changed the chorus, that's all. Yeah, that sounds more like a real spray can, right? Saturated the crap out of it to actually just give it a little bit more noise. Maybe not necessary. Put a lot of reverb on it because it sort of needs to last and it needs to drone on throughout the track to fill up the space. So a big size, a longer decay, couple of seconds, and then yeah, 30% dry wet. Did make sure to put a low cut and a high cut in so it doesn't mess with the frequencies of our main top and bass elements. And then if we go to the automation, I felt that this sample didn't have enough click. So I actually automated 12 decibels in the start just to make it go more like a little bit more aggressive, because otherwise it sounded too soft. Which essentially, like if you have an expensive transient shaper plugin, a lot of the magic they do is just from adding volume to a specifically like the first part of the sample. But anyway, and so this sample comes in just after the main lead is introduced, so we can hear the boom boom, and then here. There we go. So that's 3 times there in the drop just after the Wubwubwub. And then we've got the siren that's happening here in the second section of the drop. So I just got an air raid siren and I put like a big reverb on it so that it lasts a lot longer. I took the sample, I chopped it up a bit so that I could get the down pitch quicker. It sounds like this. And it just kind of, it blends nicely into the background. You can hear it has a really long tail, so it actually fills up a lot of the space here, which is cool. And then, yeah, the final part is just some sweeps. So there's one before the drop. So in the original sound, just before the Wubwubwub is introduced, between the horn, the first drum beat has a noise, like a little noise sample in there that just gives it some extra power. So let me turn that on and you can hear the difference. That's kind of missing some pizzazz. And then they added this noise sample here. See, that sort of does some of the pre-partying for you. It gives you a little bit of a taste already, sort of thing. So that's something cool. And then, yeah, just noise sweeps to fill up the ends of each section. That's basically it. All right, so hey, that was the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I thought that was super fun. And if you did enjoy it, I do a lot more of this kind of stuff. So please hit that subscribe button and also comment here. It really helps people view and the algorithm to push it forward, and for me to help more of you guys produce better drum and bass. And also, what do you want to see? Leave it down below. I've already got a couple of requests that I'm working on. I sometimes post on Reddit to ask as well, and there's going to be a big reproduction from Selecta by Chase and Status online very soon. So let me know what you want to do, because I am here to serve you. All right, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.